The first thing I noticed was the silence, not the kind of silence that happens when a room is empty. It was the kind that falls over a crowded room when everyone suddenly realizes something is wrong. A few seconds earlier, my daughter Lily had been laughing while trying to blow out 7 candles on her pink birthday cake. Her friends were gathered around the kitchen island. My sister was recording the moment on her phone, and my husband Daniel was standing beside me with one hand resting, casually on my shoulder. It looked like a normal family moment, the kind of moment I had spent years trying to create. Then the front door opened. At first, I thought it was one of Lily's classmates arriving late. The party was already full of noise, balloons, and children running between the living room and backyard. But when I looked up, I saw a woman standing there. She wasn't holding a gift bag. She wasn't smiling like someone who had accidentally walked into the wrong house. She was looking directly at Daniel, and Daniel looked like he had just seen a goat. Her name was Claire. Didn't know that, but I knew one thing. Immediately, my husband knew exactly who she was. Daniel? I would. He didn't answer. Hand slowly fell away from my shoulder. That was the moment my entire body went. Because sometimes you don't need someone to confess. Sometimes their reaction tells you everything. Claire took a few steps inside. She looked around at the decorations, the cake, the photos of Lily on the... Then looked at me. There was something strange in her expression, not guilt, not embarrassment, almost. Like she was sorry. And I hated that. I hated the way she looked at me like I was the last person in the room to understand what was happening. She said quietly. The way she said his name made my stomach. Not like a stranger, not like like someone who had said it many times. Or the room around moving. But I wasn't. My daughter was still sitting at the table waiting for everyone. She had no idea that the happiest day of her little week had just become the moment my marriage started. I forced myself to smile. What's going on? I asked. Daniel fully moved. He stepped toward Claire. Somehow, that hurt more than else. Because he didn't. Claire, you shouldn't be here, he said. Those words in my mind. Who are you? Not, I don't know you. Not, why did you come to my daughter? He knew. He knew exactly. My sister. The kid later. Etching. I looked at Daniel and waited for years. Ended him. When he worked late, I believed him. When he tried business, I did him. When my friends joked that husbands did something, I told them Dad. I thought husband. I thought I knew the man I had spent 12 years with. Standing there, watching him with another woman, I realized I might have been living. Mommy, Lily from the table. Her small V back. I turned around and saw her holding a birthday. Are we still doing cake? Heart broke. Because 7 years old. 7 years old and completely unaware that the adults around her were standing in the middle. I walked over at her. Of course. Sweetheart said. The voice sounded normal. I don't know how. I smiled. Day song. I watched daughter make a wish. And entire time, I could feel clicking behind me, waiting. After the children decided to play, I finally asked Daniel the question I had to ask. Who is she? Looked away. Was when I knew. Because people look you in the eyes. When they are telling the truth, they look away. When they are trying to decide how much you. Her name is, he said. I waited. That was all he offered. Okay, I replied. And why is my husband's affair partner standing in our kitchen during a party? Daniel's face changed. Not because I was wrong, because I was right. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then he voice. Don't understand. I almost laughed. I actually laughed. Because that was what he'd say. Not. I'm sorry. Not, I made a mistake. Not, I hurt you. You're right, I said. Understand. I looked toward the backyard where playing with her friends. She came into my daughter's birthday. She looked at you like you had every right to be here. So I don't understand. Rubbed his forehead. Complicated. I think I will forever. Because when something is complicated, it is painful. Sometimes it is difficult, but sometimes they mean they have been hiding something for so long that the truth has become too big to explain. Before I could say anything else, Claire walked into the kitchen. I stared at her. She was still there. I think you deserve to know, she said. Immediately turned around. Claire. No, and that was the second time that day I realized something important. Me. Afraid of what she was going to say. Breath. Then she looked at me. Your husband was leaving. You. became completely silent. I felt my chest. Because there are certain sentences that don't just hurt. They rearrange your entire memory, every business trip. Every time Daniel said he was tired, every moment I thought, we're just going through a season. Suddenly, everything looked different. I looked at my husband, the man who had helped me choose our first house, the man who held my hand when Lily was born, the man who promised me forever, and I realized he had been building another life while I was still protecting one we had that afternoon. My daughter's birthday party ended early. The balloon stayed on the walls, the cake remained half-eaten, the presents near the fireplace. But something else was gone. The version of marriage I had believed in. And as Claire walked out of my house, she couldn't stop thinking about. If Daniel had been planning to leave me, how long had he been waiting for the right moment to replace me? Ditushang, the truth. He thought he could control. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was crying. That surprised me. For years, I thought if Daniel ever betrayed me, I would fall apart. I imagined myself sitting on the bathroom floor, unable to breathe, completely destroyed. But when it actually happened, I felt something different. I felt awake, like my entire life had suddenly been covered by a thin layer of fog, and someone had finally pulled it away. The house was quiet, too quiet. Lily was asleep in her room, surrounded by stuffed animals and birthday gifts she had opened only hours earlier. The decorations from her party were still hanging downstairs, pink balloons, a banner with her name, a half-empty bowl of candy sitting on the kitchen counter. Everything looked exactly the same, except I didn't. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the place where Claire had stood. My mind kept replaying the same moment. Your husband told me he was leaving you. That sentence, those 8 words, I could make them fit with the life I remembered. Because Daniel wasn't some distant husband who barely came home. He was the man who made coffee for me every morning. The man who knew exactly how I liked my pancake. The man who held my hand during doctor appointments when Lily was born. The man who sat across from me 5 years earlier and promised that no matter what happened, we would always choose either. Apparently, he had been choosing someone. I heard footsteps behind me. Daniel, I didn't turn. You should be asleep, he said. I almost smiled. It was such a normal thing to say, like he was coming home late from work. Like this was just another ordinary. He stood there for a few. Then he pulled out the chair across from me and said, I know. Angry. The words sounded too. Daniel. I know. No, I said quietly. You don't. He looked confused. You don't know what you did because you still think this is about the affair? He didn't say anything. This is not just about Claire. I pointed toward the living room. Our daughter's birthday party was yesterday. Our was there. Your parents were there. My sister was there. You stood beside me while another woman walked into our house and told me you put her a future. Daniel swallowed. I never meant for it to happen like that. That sentence made something inside me change because somehow he still made him. He never meant for it to happen. That. Not I've done this. Not I betrayed you. Not I'm sorry. Just another explanation, another excuse. When did it? Stayed silent. And that silence told me more. How long? 8 months. 8 months. I did the number in head. 8 months of birthdays. 8 months of dinners. 8 months of pretending everything was normal. You were sleeping next to me for 8 while you were with her. It wasn't like that. I stared at him. Was it like? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because there was no version of this scent. The next morning, again, didn't know why. Maybe because I needed to hear his voice. Maybe because I needed someone to confirm that I was. When she answered, she immediately something was wrong. You sound ill, she said, a breath. Fair. And quiet. What? I closed my eyes. Claire's birthday party. What do you mean she came? She showed up. My sister didn't. For several seconds. Then her voice came, soft. Oh my God. The action hurt, because it reminded me that everyone else could see how shocking this one except Daniel. Megan came that afternoon. She brought coffee and sandwiches. Advice. I appreciated that. The people who love you sometimes want to fix your pain, because watching you hurt, uncomfortable. But Megan just sat beside me, and for the first time since the party, I'll admit something. I don't know if I'm more hurt he cheated, I said, or that he was planning a without telling me. Megan nodded. Part nobody talks. What part? The humiliation. She continued. You weren't just betrayed. You were the last person to know. Sentence stayed with me. Because she was right. Claire knew Daniel knew, maybe other people knew, and I was still making grocery lists and planning birthday decorations, was still living in a story everyone else had already read too. That evening, Damon told me he wanted to talk. I almost refused. Answers, none. For me. He said from me in the living room. I ended things with Claire. I stared at him. You end things? Yes. Why? He looked surprised by my question. Because I don't want to lose my family. It was the sentence I expected. The sentence that said, right? But somehow felt wrong. You don't want to lose your family. I repeated, yes. Well, you already risked losing us. He looked away. I continued. You didn't make one. You made hundreds of choices. That was the first time I saw something different in his expression. Guilt, fear, real fear. Because maybe he was finally realizing something. Maybe he thought the hardest part would be admitting the affair. Maybe he thought saying sorry would bring everything back. But some things don't break one moment, slowly, one at a time. Later that, after Daniel went upstairs, shared tablet we kept in the office, I wasn't for proof. At least, that's what I told myself. I just wanted to understand, but then I saw something, a calendar, notification, a hotel. The date was 3 months earlier. The weekend, he told me he was visiting his brother. I stared at the screen. Suddenly, the affair just a betrayal was a pattern. A second, a carefully planned secret. I sat there holding the tablet in my hands, realized something terrifying. Claire wasn't the beginning. She was just the person who my front door and forced me to see it. The first time I chose myself, the next morning, I woke up before my alarm. That used to happen only on days when I had something important planned, a vacation, a birthday, a special family event. But this time, I woke up because my mind refused to let me rest. For a few seconds, I forgot. I opened my eyes and saw the sunlight coming through the curtains. I heard the coffee machine downstairs. I almost turned over to tell Daniel good morning. Then everything came back. Claire, the birthday, party, the hotel reservation, the 8 months of lies. My marriage wasn't falling apart. It had already been damaged, was just finally seeing the cracks. Got out of bed quietly. Daniel was still asleep. Looked at him for a moment. That was the hardest part. Not because I missed him, because I remembered him. There is a difference. Remembered the man I thought he was. The man who stayed up all night painting Lily's nursery. The man who drove 3 hours when my car broke down. The man who cried when our daughter was born. But memories are dangerous. Sometimes they make you hold on to someone who no longer exists. Downstairs and made for the first time in 12 years. I made it only for myself. That small thing felt strange, almost rebellious. A few minutes, Daniel walked into the kitchen. He looked tired. I hated that part of it. But it was true. For weeks, maybe he had carried a secret while I carried our. Now he was finally uncomfortable. Can I walk? I asked. I didn't look up from coffee. We walking? No. I mean, really. I placed them. He sat across. I know the hotel reservation. I almost looked bad. Died. I'm trying to explain. Then, explain. He rubbed his hands together. I didn't know how to end things. There it was. Sentence people use when they want their actions to sound like something that. I know how. Stared at him. You had 8 months to know how. He looked away. I was confused. Were you confused when you booked the hotel? Were you confused when you lied about visiting your brother? Were you confused when you came home and kissed me goodnight? Daniel eyes. And for the first time. But shame is not the same as. I will fix this. What does that mean? It means I'll do what it takes. What it takes? Truth. He nodded. I will. No, my voice of us. Not the truth. Think we'll save you. I leaned forward. Truth. Daniel didn't answer. And that hesitation told me something. There was still more. I stood up. Need space. His face changed. What do you mean? I mean I'm away from you. You're leaving? No. I looked toward the stairs where Lily's sleeping. I'm not taking our daughter away from her home. I'm not destroying her life choices. Important to me. Because whatever happened between Daniel and me, Lily deserved stability, but I deserved something. Respect. A voice. That afternoon, I called a lawyer, not because I decided to leave, not because I wanted revenge. I called because for years, I had trusted Daniel with everything. Our finances, our house, our future. And suddenly, I realized that the appointment was with a woman named Rachel Morgan. She family law. But she didn't start about divorce. She questioned, "What do you want?" I know how to answer. Nobody in years. I had always thought about what Lily needed, what Daniel needed. But me, I couldn't remember I thought about that. I don't know, I admitted. Rachel nodded. That's more common than you think. She explained options. The house, the finance, the accounts, the things I needed to understand. Nothing dramatic like the movies. Just reality, and reality's terrifying because I realized something. My big fear wasn't losing Daniel. It was realizing how much of him. When I got home, Daniel was sitting on the couch. He looked at, "Where were you?" The question bothered me. Not because he asked, because I familiar it sounded. For years, I'd always known where I was because I told him, considered him my partner. But now, suddenly I felt like I have my own life. I had an appointment. With who? Looked at him. A lawyer. Expression changed instantly. Serious? Yes. Are you trying to punish me? That more than I expected, because it showed me something. Daniel still believed my actions were him, even now, after everything. This, I said. I took a breath. It's me making sure I'm not the only person in it's happening. Respond. That night, I went through old files in our office, mortgage papers, bank statements, insurance, documents. Things I had ignored because Daniel always handled them, and that was when I found something strange. From our joint account. A large payment. Not huge enough to ruin us, but large enough to matter. The recipient name wasn't familiar. The screen. Then I looked at the date. It was the same week Claire first appeared in Daniel's messages. My heart started beating faster, because now I had a new question. The affair was one problem. But what else had my husband? I closed the laptop. For the first time since I walked into my daughter's birthday party, I didn't feel powerless. I was hurt. I was scared. But I was no longer one else to tell me the truth. The next one I was going to find it myself. Demontem. The strangest part about discovering a secret is not the secret itself. It is realizing how many ordinary moments were actually clues. For the next few days, I started seeing my marriage differently. The little things I used to ignore suddenly had a different meaning. The extra time Daniel spent on his phone, the sudden interest in buying new clothes, the business trips that became more frequent, the evenings when he said he was exhausted and went straight to bed. I had spent months finding innocent explanations for everything, because that is what people do when they love someone. They protect the person they believe they know. But once trust breaks, your mind starts searching through the past, looking for the moment when reality changed. I hated that. Hated questioning every memory, because some of those memories were still real. Lily's first day of kindergarten, our 10th anniversary dinner, the weekend we painted the kitchen together. Those moments happened. They just existed next to a truth I didn't know, and that was the hardest thing to A person can love you and still hurt. A person can build a life with you and still hide things from you. Both things be true. 3 days after the birthday, I found another financial word. The transfer I had discovered was still bothering. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. Because the alternative meant Daniel had not only betrayed my trust, he had risked our family's. I waited until Lily left school before I asked him. He was standing in the kitchen, making coffee. The same kitchen where Claire had told me. Daniel. What's wrong? I placed the document on her. What is this? His eyes on. For a second, his face changed. Only. You went through the accounts? The question immediately annoyed me. Not because it was fair. Because it was exactly what I expected. Him to focus on. Not the money. Not see. Not the betrayal. Actions. Found a transfer from our joint account. He looked at her again. Nothing. Nothing? Yes. How much money? Thing, Daniel. $6. At him. $6. Not enough to describe. Where did it go? Answer. And that silence was for Claire. The kitchen suddenly. I grabbed the counter. For what? I helped her. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I didn't do her. While you were having an affair with her? Way. She was going through a difficult time. I nodded slowly. That was when something inside me finally broke. Not my heart, something else. My patience. You gave another woman money from account. Like that? You keep saying that. I looked at him. But it exactly like that. Daniel looked closer. To tell you. When? He stopped. Were you planning to tell me? No answer. Because no good answer. That evening, I called Megan. I didn't hear everything immediately. I just said, there's more. Come over after dinner. Told her about the money. Question changed. Not just cheating. I know. No, something else. I looked at her. He wasn't only hiding a relationship. He was making decisions that affected your whole you. Those words stayed with me. As she was right. The affair was painful, but different. It meant Daniel had created a world where mine didn't matter. Where I was his wife would comfort, but not his. The next day, something that I didn't expect. Claire called me. I almost didn't answer, made me pick up. Hello. There was silence. Probably hate me. Eyes. I'd hate you. It was quiet. That's fair. I waited. Why are you calling? Wanted to explain. I almost, but I didn't. Explain what? Told me you knew about us. My stomach. And he told already planning to leave him. What? He said your marriage was a picture. The room went silent. It was not what Daniel told us. I sat down. Did he tell you that? Yes. When? Months ago. I felt something shift. Because suddenly, the story had another side. Not as Claire wasn't. She wasn't. She had still chosen a married man. But maybe Daniel had not just lied to me. Maybe he had lied to both of us. Why did you believe him? I asked. Her voice became softer because he showed me messages. What messages? Texts between you and him. My hands went cold. What did they say? She hesitated. He said you were unhappy. Because of Lily. I stared at the wall. Heard those conversations. Felt months after Lily born. The dress. The argument. Yes. Was tired. Yes, I had said I felt lost. Never said I wanted to leave. Daniel had taken my words and turned them into proof. Easier. After the call ended, I sat there for a long time, because for the first time, I realized something. Claire had hurt me. But Daniel had created the entire situation, had a story where everyone was allowed to believe responsibility. That night, home late. Again. I watched him walk through the door. The old version of me would have asked where he had been. This old version of me searched for reassurance. But I wasn't that person anymore. Dan, I said, looked at me. Need to talk. He sighed. But I looked directly at him. About the version you created when I wasn't. For the first, he didn't have an answer. And that scared me. Because I realized to save the marriage I had. I was trying to discover whether that I had ever existed at all. For the first time in 12 years of marriage, I locked the bedroom door. It was a small thing, almost meaningless. But standing there with my hand on the lock, I realized something. I had spent years making sure Daniel felt comfortable in our home. I made sure he had a quiet place after work. I made sure dinner was ready when his schedule was busy. I made sure Lily felt safe even when we were exhausted. I had spent so much time creating peace for everyone else that I forgot I deserved some peace too. That night, Daniel knocked on the door. Can we talk? I sat on the edge of the bed. No, there was a pause. I think we need to. I looked at the door. You've had 8 months to talk. Silence. Then his voice became softer. I made mistakes. I closed my eyes. That word again. Mistakes. As if forgetting an appointment. As if choosing the wrong restaurant. As if sending the wrong email. Not building an entire secret life. Daniel, I said, you didn't make one mistake. I heard him breathe. You made decisions. He didn't answer. And that was the first time I noticed something. Daniel was comfortable explaining, but he was terrible at accepting responsibility. The next morning, I decided to look deeper into our finances. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to destroy him. Because I needed to know what kind of life I was actually living. For years, Daniel handled most of the financial planning. At first, it made sense. He was better with numbers. He enjoyed spreadsheets. He liked tracking investments and retirement accounts. I trusted him. That was what marriage was supposed to be. Trust. But trust without information can become dependence, and dependence can become dangerous. I spent 2 hours going through our accounts, mortgage payments, credit card statements, insurance records, everything. Then I found something. A second account. My name was not on it. Daniel had opened it 18 months earlier. My heart started beating faster. I clicked through the records. Most transactions were normal. Restaurants, gas, small purchases. Then I saw larger payments. A storage unit. A furniture store. A rental company. I stared at the screen. A rental company. I checked the dates. The payments started before Claire appeared at Lily's birthday party. Before I knew anything. Before I even suspected anything. I printed the records. Not because I needed proof. Because I needed something physical. Something real. Something I couldn't convince myself I had misunderstood. That afternoon, I called Daniel. Can you come home early? His voice immediately changed. What happened? We need to talk. He arrived 40 minutes later. The moment he walked in, he knew. I didn't have to say anything. People who hide things always recognize the moment they are found out. I placed the documents on the table. What is this? He looked down. His face became pale. Where did you get this? That's your first question? He sat down. I can explain. I almost smiled. Everyone says that when the truth finally catches them. I'm listening. Daniel looked at the papers. It wasn't what you think. I shook my head. Then tell me what I should think. He stayed quiet. Daniel. Finally, he spoke. I was thinking about leaving, even though I expected something like that. Hearing him say it still hurt. How long? I don't know. That's not an answer. He looked away. Maybe a year. A year. I felt my chest tighten. For a year, I'd been trying to improve our marriage, planning family trip, trying to reconnect, believing we were just going through a difficult period, and he had been preparing an exit plan. Did Claire know? He didn't answer. That was enough. She knew. Yet. I stood. So she knew you were planning a new life? It wasn't like that. I looked at him. You really need to find another sentence. Daniel rubbed his face. I was unhappy. There it was. The reason he had built in his mind. Not a choice. Not a betrayal. Unhappiness. I nodded slowly. Were you unhappy enough to talk? I tried. No, you didn't. My voice became strong. You complained. You became distant. You avoided conversation. But you never sat down and said, I'm struggling. I'm afraid. I don't know how to fix this. Daniel looked at the floor. Because I thought you wouldn't understand. That sentence. Not because it was true. Because it was convenient. You didn't give me the chance. That evening, I met Claire in a coffee shop. I didn't plan. She had texted. I almost ignored. But there were too many unanswered questions. When I arrived, she was already sitting near the window. She looked nervous, different from the woman who walked into my house. Maybe because now she wasn't standing on Daniel's side. Now she had to face me alone. I know you probably don't want to see. I deserve. I stuttered. I expected anger. I expected arrogance. But what I saw was something else. I need to know something. She looked. Did Daniel ever tell you he was still trying to fix our marriage? Her expression changed. He never. She shook her. He told me you two were basically roommates. I laughed quietly. Not because it was unbelievable. Roommate. That was the word he used to describe 12 years. A house, a child, a family, just room. Claire looked. I thought he was going to. You thought that because he told. And you believed. She didn't. Because she knew what she had made a choice. But Daniel had created the circumstance. When I left the cop, I didn't forgive. But I finally understood the size of the. This wasn't just about an affair. The affair was only the visible. Underneath it was something much. A husband who had slowly rewritten our entire marriage story without me. That night, I opened my laptop and started documenting every messes, financial records, conversation. Not because I wanted to destroy, because I needed to protect myself. And as I finished writing the last note, I received a message from an unknown number. Once. That's all. Your husband hasn't told you the worst part. I stared at. My hands went cold. Because after everything I had already done, I realized I still didn't know the whole. The message stayed on my phone all night. Your husband hasn't told you the worst part yet. I read it again and again, not because I didn't understand the words, because I understood them too well. There was more. After everything I had already learned, there was still something Daniel had kept from me, and the worst part was that I wasn't even surprised anymore. That realization hurt more than the message itself. A few weeks earlier, I would have been shocked. I would have defended him. I would have searched for another explanation. But now I knew better. The man I had trusted most had become someone I had to investigate. The next morning, I showed the message to Megan. She read it silently. Then she looked at me. Do you know who sent it? I shook my head. No. Did you reply? No. She nodded. Good. I looked at her. You think someone is trying to hurt him? I think someone knows something. That was the problem. Everyone seemed to know something. Claire knew one version. Daniel knew another. And somehow, I was still trying to piece together my own life from pieces other people had hidden from me. I spent the rest of the morning trying to act normal for Lily. That was the hardest part. Children don't understand adult problems. They only understand changes. Mom is quiet. Dad is stressed. The house feels different. Lily noticed everything. Are you and Daddy fighting? She asked while eating cereal. I froze. Parents always imagine they will know the perfect thing to say in moments like that. But the truth is, sometimes there is no perfect answer. There have been some grown-up problems. Are you getting divorced? The question hit me harder than I expected, because she was only sin. She shouldn't have to know that word because of us. I sat beside her. Nothing is your fault. Do you understand? But children may not understand the details. They understand her. And I could see fear in her eyes. That was when I made a decision. No matter what happened between Daniel, I would not let our daughter become another person hurt by his choice. That afternoon, Daniel came home. He looked I need to talk. I almost said, but something in his voice. What happened? He said. Then he said something I didn't. Claire wasn't the only person. My stomach. What does that mean? He looked uncomfortable. There was someone else new. Who? He headed. My friend. I asked him. Your friend knew? Daniel nodded. And before the birthday party. So your friend knew you were. He knew I would. No. My voice became. He knew you. Daniel. That answer was enough, because again, I was learning something new. The affair wasn't just between people. It had existed around people, had seen pieces of it, people had known, and nobody thought I deserved the truth. Why didn't anyone tell me? The answer. Because the answer is, nobody wanted to be the person who destroyed. Somehow, everyone was comfortable letting. Late evening, Daniel finally told me the parting. The rental company. Second account? Money, it was only for Claire. He had rented a small apartment, not because he had moved out, because he had been pairing. And a place to go if he decided to leave. I lived without saying anything, because my changed. At first, I was angry he cheated. Then I was angry he lied. Now I was angry because he had spent months building a future where you were planning without me, I said. Daniel's eyed with regret. Didn't know what I wanted. I looked at him. That's not true. He was quiet. You knew enough apartment. That was the moment he finally stopped defending himself because there was to explain. The next few days were the hardest days of my life, not because of Daniel, because of everything around him. The house different. The places that used to feel safe anymore. The kitchen where we made breakfast. The couch where we watched movies. The bedroom where we promised. Forever, everything carried a memory, and every memory carried a question. Was it real? One evening, I found myself standing in front of our wedding photo. Daniel and I, smiling, young, certain. We looked like two people who believed love was enough. I wondered when that changed. And then I realized something. Maybe the biggest mistake wasn't Daniel stopped loving me. Maybe it was that I stopped asking being loved. Had accepted distance. Had accepted silence. I had accepted being last on his list because I thought that was marriage. Required, compromise, peace, understanding. But there is a difference between understanding someone's struggles and allowing someone your own life. That night, I packed a small bag, not to leave forever, just for a few days. I needed space, little space. He watched me from the doorway. Are you leaving? I looked at him, for the first time in years, because I need it. He didn't say anything. I picked my bag. He looked up. You kept for me to find. His expression changed. But you never what would happen after I. Then I walked out, stayed at Megan's house. For the first time in 12 years, I slept somewhere my husband was hiding. But the next morning, woke up to a message from 3 words. I found something. Attached to a photo, document, a name. And the moment I saw it, I knew my marriage had been a bigger secret than an affair. The photo Claire sent me changed everything. I stared at it for almost 5 minutes before I opened the message. Not because I was afraid of what was inside, because I already knew. Every time someone said, "There's something you need to know," my life changed afterward. The first time, it was Claire walking into my daughter's birthday party. The second time, it was the hotel reservation. The third time, it was the hidden account. And now there was something else. I finally opened the attachment. It was a document, a lease agreement, but not the apartment I already knew about. A different one. The name on the document wasn't Daniel's, it was mine. I frowned. I read it again. My name, my information, my personal details. I immediately called Claire. She answered after only one ring. You saw it? Yes, I said. What is this? There was a long pause. I found it when I was looking through Daniel's thing. My stomach tightened. You were looking through his thing? Yes. Her voice sounded ashamed. After everything happened, I wanted to understand what he had been telling me too. I stayed quiet. Then she continued. The apartment he rented wasn't only for him. I looked at the document again. What do you mean? He told me he was setting up a place for you and Lily. I froze. He said after he left, he wanted you to have somewhere to stay. I felt confused, angry, lost, because somehow, even now, nothing made sense. So he was planning to leave me, but he was also planning a place for me? Yes, I sat down. That was not what I expected. I had built a picture of Daniel as someone who had simply erased, but this was different. Still wrong, still painful, but what else did he tell you? Claire has. He told me he was going to make sure you were taken. I laughed quietly. Not because it was, because I didn't know whether to cry or get taken care of. I looked around Megan's guest room, at the bag I had, at the life I had temporarily walked away. Claire, do you understand what's wrong? She didn't. He decided. My voice became. He decided to eat. He decided. He decided how much money I have. He decided where. I looked at. Even when he thought he was still controlling the situation. There was silence, because that was the truth neither of us wanted. Daniel had convinced himself that because he wasn't trying to destroy, he wasn't hurting us, but good intentions don't erase the damage caused by bad. After the ended, I sat there for a time. Part of me wanted to call Daniel immediately, wanted to demand answers. I wanted him to explain thing. But another part of me stopped, because I realized something. For the time, I didn't need him to tell me he was. His actions had already shown me. I went home that afternoon, not because I was ready to forgive him, because I needed to take control of my own life. Daniel was in the living room, walked in. He looked surprised. You're back. I'm here to talk. He stood up. Okay. I placed the document on the table. It's changed. Did you get that, Claire? Eyes. Of course. Secret. Another person. Daniel said. Why is there an apartment lease on it? Sat down, slowly. I was trying to make sure you were okay. You were to leave, yes. And you thought you could decide my future before telling me? He didn't answer, because he knew. You don't understand, he said. I almost smiled. That sentence. Again, I understand perfectly. I sat across from him. You thought because you were protecting me financially. You weren't betraying me. Daniel looked down. I was scared. That was the first honest thing I'd said in weeks. Not an excuse. Not a defense. Fear. I was scared. Everything. He continued. I nodded. And you made sure you had a plan. Yes. But you never thought about what I would need. He looked at me. It hurt him. I could tell, but pain was not enough more. I needed change. Need to understand something. I said, I need you to save me. Quiet. I needed a husband who trusted me enough to tell me the truth. The room became silent, because that was the real loss. Not the apartment, not the money, even Claire. The loss somewhere along the way. Daniel seen me as his partner. He started seeing me to manage. That night, I made a decision. I went into divorce. I went into forgiveness. I would not my future. I was going to rebuild my life. The next morning, I turned to work. For months, I'd been distracted. Understand Daniel, trying to fix things, out what went wrong, but sitting at my desk, answering emails, talking with coworkers, I felt something felt in a long not happy, not capable. During lunch, my coworker Jenna asked me if I was okay, usually, smiled and said yes. That was what I always did. This time I told the truth. Honestly, no. She looked, laughed. Good? Yes. Because pretending you're fine all this, exhausting. The whole sentence stayed with me. Because maybe that was what I had been doing for years. Pretending. The distance wasn't there. Pretending the silence and hurting. Pretending. Carrying everything. That evening, Daniel sent me a message. I want to prove I can change. I looked at this months ago. That mess given me hope. It gave me a question. Not, does he still love me? But, is he willing to become someone I trust? For the first time, the answer was no longer up. It was up to me. And Daniel learned something important. Losing my trust was easy. Getting it the hardest thing he had ever done. For the first time in months, I stopped trying to understand Daniel. That might sound strange. After everything that happened, most people would think understanding him was the one thing I needed. Why did he cheat? Why did he lie? Why did he build a second life? But I realized something important. Sometimes searching for someone else's reasons keeps you trapped inside their choices. Had spent weeks analyzing Daniel's actions, his fears, his excuses, his regrets. But I had barely asked myself one question. What did I want now? Not what did Daniel want? Not what would save our marriage? Not what would make everyone else comfortable? What did I want? That question changed everything. The following week, I met with Rachel, the lawyer I had spoken to before. This time, I wasn't there because I was scared. I was there because I was prepared. I want to understand every option. I told her. Rachel nodded. That's a good place to start. She explained everything clear. The house and the account, the document, the responsibilities we share. Nothing was dramatic. Nothing was like the stories people tell. Real life was paperwork, conversations, and difficult decisions. But somehow that made it feel more serious. Because this wasn't a moment of anger. This was my actual life. When I came home, Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table. He looked at the folder in my hand. You met with Rachel. He nodded. Are you leaving? I looked. A few months earlier, that question would have broken. I noticed Daniel was finally afraid of losing. Not because Claire was, not because his plan had, because he was finally facing the consequences. His face fell, and for the first time, I didn't rush to comfort him. That was new for. The old version of myself would have immediately said something to make him better. It'll okay. We'll figure it out. I still love you, but I had spent too long protecting everyone else's ends. I allowed to my own. I need you to understand something. I said, Daniel, me. You keep asking if leaving, but you never ask what you need to do. Quiet. That silence. Next day, something unexpected happened. Daniel's friend Mark called me. I almost didn't answer. Hello? There was hesitation and I know you probably don't want to write. I understand. I waited. I owed apology. It surprised me. Not because I thought Mark was innocent. He wasn't. He had watched my husband lie, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. I'd have told you. Yes. I thought I was protecting Daniel. I shook my head. Even see me. Everyone's that. What? Everyone said we're protecting one. Window. But nobody protected. Then Mark said something that changed the way I saw the entire situation. Daniel wasn't planning to leave because of Claire. I froze. What? He was already unhappy he met her. I waited. He had been thinking about changing his life for a time. My heart sank. Not because it hurt, confirmed something. The affair wasn't the beginning. It was a symptom. Why are you telling me this now? Because I think Daniel still he did. I listened. He keeps stake. He didn't. He slowly built a life where he stopped. That was exactly what I'd been feeling. But it wasn't one moment. After the call, I sat quietly. Then my phone rang again. This time, it was Claire. I just ignored it, but I answered. I know what you're thinking, she said. What? That I want something. I didn't respond. She continued. I don't. That surprised me. Then why? He contacted me. My stomach tightened. What did he say? He apologized. I waited, and he told stake choosing me. For some reason, this made me angry, not because of Claire, because of Daniel. Even now, he was making everything about choices. Choosing me, choosing her, as if we were on a list. He doesn't understand. I said. Claire was quiet. He thinks he chose. Around my home. At least. Part of the problem was that he became someone who thought he had the right to choose everyone's future except his own. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Claire said something. Unexpected. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't friendship. But it was something she had said to me. That evening, Daniel came home at the kitchen table. I know. His face changed. Did she tell you? Yes. He sat down. Wanted to tell you myself. But you didn't. He looked away again. That familiar movement. The a symbol of everything. Avoiding, hiding, waiting. Until someone discovered the truth. I pushed a folder toward him. What's this? He opened it. Inside were copies of financial records, everything I had collected. His face as he looked through the pages. You documented? Yes. I answered honestly. Because I finally realized I was the only person in this information. He closed the folder. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel whispered, I really hurt you. I looked at him. No excuses. Just the truth. And strangely, that time his apology sounded real. But an apology could not erase months of lies. It could only be the beginning. The next morning, Daniel received an email from his company. A complaint had been filed about his beef with a coworker, not Claire, someone else. A situation connected to the same period of time. Watched his expression change as he read. It fear, fusion, panic, and suddenly, I understood. The consequences were no longer something I was creating. They were on their own. For months, Daniel had story. Who believed what information came, but that was ending. The truth starts coming out. Nobody gets to decide where it stops. The email from Daniel's company arrived on a Tuesday morning. I remember that because Tuesday had always been my busiest day at work. Meetings, reports, deadlines, normal things. Before everything happened, I used to complain about how stressful ordinary life could be. Now, I would have given anything to go back to those ordinary problems. Because ordinary problems don't make you question your entire life. Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table, holding his phone. He looked different. Not like the confident man who always had an explanation. Not like the man who believed he could control every situation. He looked scared. What happened? I asked. He placed the phone down. There's an investigation. I stayed quiet. About what? He looked uncomfortable. Someone reported inappropriate behavior. I felt my stomach tighten. Who? He shook his head. I don't know. That answer bothered me. Not because I expected him to know everything. Because for months, Daniel had acted like every problem had a simple explanation. Now he was finally facing something he couldn't manage. Is it Claire? No. The answer came quickly. Too quickly. I watched his face. What happened, Daniel? He looked away, and that was enough. Another coworker? He didn't answer. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt exhausted. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just exhausted. Because I realized something. Painful. I had spent weeks trying to understand how one person could hurt me so deeply. But maybe the question wasn't why he made one terrible choice. Maybe the question was why he kept making choices that protected himself. I swear nothing happened. He said. I looked at him. Do you hear yourself? You're still starting with defending your... He became quiet. I'm scared. I could lose my... He looked. Then why do you sound like you don't... That question stayed between us. Because the old me have immediately comforted him. Would have worried. I would have helped him. I would have carried part of his fear. But I couldn't do that anymore. Not because I finally understood. Supporting someone does not mean saving them from the consequences of their own action. Here. But I can't keep being the person who catches you every time you fall after you put... Daniel. And he did. That night, we had the most honest conversation we had. Not the least. The most... I was unhappy for a long time. But I handled it the worst way. I convinced myself. Were you? That answer surprised me, because I think I wanted a life, he continued, but I didn't have courage to admit I was responsible for changing it. That's the first you've said. He looked hurt. I thought if I made quietly, I could avoid hurting everyone. Almost laughed. Daniel, you didn't avoid anyone. I point house. You just delayed the moment when I found out. Floor. No. First time. I understood. Completely. Not enough to fix everything, but enough. Days later, I met Claire all the time. Not because I wanted closure from her, because I wanted to close that chapter for myself. We met at the same coffee shop where she'd first explained side of the story. Nervous. I didn't know if you would come. I almost didn't. She nodded. I understand. For a while, neither of us spoke, and she said, I'm sorry. I looked at her. I know. She seemed surprised. I know you are. But sorry change what happened. She nodded. I know. The difference. Months earlier, everyone had been trying to explain. Now, for the first time, people accepting. I blamed you, I admitted. Claire looked at me. I know. But the more I learned, the more I realized Daniel created most of the damage. She looked down. I know. We sat there, quietly, two women who had both believed a story told by the same man. Neither of us walked away winners. There. No victory and betrayal. When I got home, was waiting. I made a decision, looked at him. What decision? I'm going to move out. I didn't You're leaving? For now. He took a breath. I think we need space. A few months earlier, Tins would have dissed me. Now, felt something else. Relief. Because I wanted him gone. Because for the first time, the forced on me. I think that's right, I said. Daniel nodded. His face was real. And strangely, that made me sad despite everything. Still remembered the good part. I still cared. But caring about someone and choosing opposites. Morning Daniel moved out. Lily stood by the front door. Are you coming back? Daniel knelt beside her. Always your dad? That's not what I asked. His face changed. Children have a way of asking the questions adults avoid. I don't know what happened. He said. Lily looked at him. Then she hugged him. To look away. Because that moment reminded important. The end of a marriage does not mean the end of a family, but rebuilding a family requires honesty. Some started with. Evening after Daniel left, in the quiet house, Claire had walked in. The same marriage had broken apart, but it felt different, because this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone else to decide my future. I was deciding it myself. Then my phone buzzed. Message final, only one sentence. I finally understand what I lost. I stared at the and for the first time, didn't immediately feel pain. I felt uncertainty, because the truth was, I didn't know if I wanted me to find his way back, and I would have to answer next. The first morning after Daniel moved out, I woke up before my alarm. Again, it had become a strange habit. For months, I had been waking up because my mind was racing. Questions, fear, anger, memories. I couldn't escape, but that morning was different. The house was quiet. Not the painful kind of quiet, a peaceful kind. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window. For years, I thought losing my marriage would mean losing my entire life. I thought everything I built was connected to Daniel, our house, our routines, our future. But standing there alone, I realized something was still here that mattered. The weeks after Daniel moved out were not easy. Anyone who says starting over feels freeing immediately is lying. Sometimes it feels lonely, sometimes it feels terrifying, sometimes you miss someone who hurt you. That was the part nobody prepared me for. I missed him, not the man who lied, not the man who hid things. I missed the person I thought he was, and accepting that difference was one of the hardest things I had ever done. Daniel and I started seeing each other once a week to talk, not about getting back together, not yet, just talking, real conversations, kind we should have had years earlier. At first, it felt strange. We were learning how to communicate without pretending everything was. One evening, Daniel came over to help Lily with her science project. After she went upstairs, we sat in the same kitchen where everything had started falling. I've been thinking. I looked about how I became someone I don't recognize. I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself I was that I deserved something different, that I was trying to avoid hurting. He looked around him. But the truth is, I was avoiding being No, I hurt you because I was afraid to face my own. Now? Now I know I can't fix what happened by asking you to trust. Then what doing? Trying to become someone who deserves. Once, I didn't hear a promise. I heard a responsibility, and that was different. Months passed slowly, quietly. Life began to revolve. Started spending more time with friends, work. I started making decisions without asking myself what everyone else first. I learned something. Independence is not about proving you need anyone. It's about knowing you can stand on your own. Lily adjusted to children are stronger than adults give them credit for. She still, her father. She still asked when he was cover. She still wanted us both at her schools, and we both, because no matter what happened between me, Lily deserved parents first. Almost a year after a party. 8. I thought of the day Claire wore, the day my marriage. That year, her birthday felt different. The house was, again, the same way. pretending, not secrets. Just people. Arrived with a gift. He stood at the door for a moment. For a second, I saw the old Daniel from years ago. Then I remember everything. Something. Forgiveness. Forgetting. It means you stop allowing the pain to control you. After the party, Daniel and I stood outside while with her friends. Thought we would get here, he said. There did I. He looked at me. Do you ever regret staying? Thought about that question. The old me would have answered. Immediately. Oh. But now I understood life was more complicated. I regret the things we ignored. He nodded. I do too, but I don't regret who I am without you. That was the truth. A truth. But an important one. Daniel looked down. No, I don't get to ask for another chance. No, he nodded, but I hope someday you want to give me one. I looked at him. The answer you feel. Impossible. Now it felt like something I could choose. Not something I owed him. Something I needed. Something I decided. I know what the future, I said. Daniel nodded. I understand. But if there is a future for us, it won't be afraid of being alone. He listened. It will only happen if we become two people honestly. For the first, Daniel smiled. Because everything was fixed. Because he finally understood it wasn't getting back what he lost. Different. That night, after everyone left, I got birthday decorations. A year earlier, another birthday party I thought I had. This one reminded me that life, sometimes, that is where rebuilding begins. I found an old photo from Lily's first birthday. Daniel and I were standing together, young, happy, certain, picture for a long time. Then I smiled. Because I finally understood something. That woman in the photo wasn't foolish for believing in love. She was brave. She loved deeply. She trusted. Completely. And even though someone broke, they didn't break. I was still a mother. Still a friend. Still with dreams that belonged to me. My marriage had ended. In a way I never, my life had not. The truth was painful. The betrayal changed me, but it also forced me to find the person I had forgotten. And that Daniel could never take away.